Right now, Iran and Israel are caught in this really uneasy ceasefire, after a short but pretty brutal war. But don't let the quiet fool you. Behind the scenes, both countries are scrambling, getting ready for the next round. So the real question isn't if another war is coming, it's when. And who's going to make the first move?
Okay, so to really get a grip on this whole shadow war, we have to start in a pretty unexpected place. I want you to picture this, a super fancy high-end apartment building in northern Tel Aviv. It's called the Da Vinci Towers. And back in June of 2025, bam, it gets hit by an Iranian ballistic missile.
But here's the thing. This was no accident. This wasn't a stray missile. Because hidden deep underneath all those luxury apartments and fancy shops was one of the most sensitive military installations in the entire region.
Yeah, that strike on the Da Vinci Towers, it basically blew the lid off a secret that was never supposed to see the light of day. It was a direct hit on a joint U.S.-Israeli base, a base that was designed to be completely invisible.
So this place was called Site 81, and we're not just talking about some regular old bunker. No, this was an electromagnetically shielded command center. Basically, it was built with all this advanced tech to block any kind of electronic eavesdropping, making it, theoretically, incredibly secure.
But what's really wild about Site 81 is where they put it. It was intentionally located right in the middle of a packed civilian neighborhood, just 100 meters from a children's playground. I mean, think about that. Which brings us to the million-dollar question. How on earth did Iran manage to find and hit a target that was supposed to be so well hidden?
So that strike was just one part of a 12-day war that ended in this really tense ceasefire we're seeing now. But the conflict didn't really stop. It just changed arenas. It moved from the battlefield to the press conference, with both sides just dialing up the threats. And then, in late December of 2025, you have then-President Trump standing right next to Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu, and he says something that sounds a lot like a green light. He basically signals that if Israel attacks in 2026, the full weight of the U.S. will be right there behind them.
Well, Iran's response? It was immediate and totally defiant. Their security advisor, Ali Shamkhani, came right out and said their missile forces don't need anyone's permission to act, and that any attack would be met with a retaliation so overwhelming, its planners wouldn't know what hit them.
So what we're looking at here are two nations just on a hair trigger, staring each other down. Both sides are convinced an attack from the other is coming any day now. And they're both in this frantic race to get ready for a war that, in their minds, is absolutely inevitable.
All right, so how exactly is Iran getting ready for this fight? Well, they know they can't compete with Israel's Air Force. It's just on another level. So they've poured everything they have into one key strategy. Just sheer, overwhelming missile power.
Their game plan is actually pretty simple, but it's brutally effective. Get good intelligence on a target, and then launch a precise missile right at it. I mean, the hit on Site 81 proved the concept works, right? If you've got solid intel and a good missile, who needs a massive air force? And believe me, they are not afraid to use these things. In just 12 days of war, Iran launched 574 ballistic missiles at Israel. Think about that number. That massive barrage burned through more than a third of their entire estimated arsenal at the time.
But trying to rebuild that arsenal? Well, that's where they hit a huge snag. It all comes down to this one piece of equipment called a planetary mixer. This thing is the single most complicated, most critical part of the whole production line. See, without it, you just can't properly mix the chemicals from modern solid fuel rockets. If you get it even a tiny bit wrong, the missile either fails or worse, it just explodes on the launch pad.
So Iran is in a flat-out race against the clock. We're seeing satellite photos of them rebuilding the production sites that Israel hit. They're shipping in key chemicals from China. Get this, just one 2,000-ton shipment is enough to produce around 500 new missiles. The goal here is simple. Get those factories running 24/7 and build a stockpile so huge it can just completely overwhelm Israel's defenses.
Okay, so that's Iran's plan. What about Israel? How are they planning to counter this? Well, their strategy is pretty straightforward and definitely aggressive, and they're working on two fronts at the same time.
On the military side, the #1 goal is to destroy Iran's ability to make more missiles. And yeah, that means going after those supercritical planetary mixers. Then, on the diplomatic side, it's all about making sure that when they do strike, they have the full political and material support of the United States locked in.
Of course, none of this happens for free. A modern war isn't just about clever strategy. It is incredibly, unbelievably expensive. And the economic reality of this situation, well, it's a huge piece of the puzzle. So let's just look at the numbers for 2026. Iran's defense budget is projected to be around $9.2 billion. Israel's, on the other hand, $35 billion. That difference right there tells you a key part of Israel's strategy. Just outspend your opponent into the ground.
But hold on, that's not even the whole story. Because between late 2023 and late 2025, the U.S. gave Israel almost $34 billion in aid and operational support. That essentially doubles Israel's military budget. It creates a financial gap that is just almost impossible to overcome.
But Israel has a critical weakness, an Achilles heel, if you will. Those amazing advanced missile defense systems, they cost a fortune to operate. During the last war, they were firing off interceptors so quickly that if it weren't for U.S. resupply flights, their entire defensive shield would have been empty in just 10 to 12 days.
And all of this brings us to what's really at the heart of this conflict. It's not just about missiles or money or tough talk from politicians. The next war, it's going to be won or lost on a completely unseen battlefield.
Because you have to remember, for all the successful strikes in the last war, Israel didn't actually achieve its main goals. Iran's nuclear program was slowed down, sure, but it wasn't destroyed. They managed to save their most highly enriched uranium. And the government in Tehran, it didn't collapse.
That strike on Site 81, it wasn't just a successful missile attack for Iran. It was a catastrophic intelligence failure for Israel. And that's what it all comes down to. The next war is going to be all about intelligence. Can Iran finally plug its massive security leaks? Or will Israeli spies find another fatal weakness they can exploit for another devastating first strike?
So that leaves us with this huge, hanging question. The missiles are definitely being built, the war chests are full, but the real outcome of this next war? It might be decided by a battle that's happening right now, completely in the shadows. Can Iran find the spies inside its own walls? Or is it already too late?